1905, we have a marriage record between the widower Patrick Buckley and Miss Elizabeth Collins. And in this time period, again, there'll just be the certificate and record of marriage issued through the Department of Health. You see there in the upper left-hand corner. I think the jurisdiction for the government agency moved around, but ultimately it became a Department of Health record. And we see that, he's living at 115 East 92nd Street. She's at 3 Gramercy Place. He's 42. She's 31. He's widowed. She's single. He's an electrician. She's not a widow, so that line is blank. They're both born in Ireland. He's the son of Dennis, presumably Buckley, and Catherine Cahill. She's the daughter of William, presumably Collins, and Anne Connell. It's the second marriage for the groom and the first marriage for the bride. The Epiphany Roman Catholic Church. They were married the 26th day of November 1905, and the witnesses were Charles McCarthy and Anne O'Leary. And then the signatures on the back. Now, since this was Patrick's second marriage, he was married in 1893, 12 years earlier, to the former Ellen Sullivan, his late wife. And in Ireland, the civil marriage record just records the name of the father. It doesn't record the mother. So by him getting married a second time and in a different jurisdiction, we do learn that for sure he's the son of Catherine Cahill. And then here is the Catholic Register again in 1905, providing just the basic, barest of details. They are towards the middle of the page. Patrick Buckley, Elizabeth Collins, the date, the witness, and then the celebrants, and then whether banns were read or if they were dispensed. So we don't have any details about him being a widower, etc. So the civil marriage record in this time period isn't duplicated, so it's not quite as helpful between 1888 and 1908. But starting in 1908, the advent of the license to marry. So you had ultimately a 3-page document, and this is from 1916, and Patrick Joseph Goodwin and Miss Margaret Gorman are planning to marry. So they go in, they fill out the affidavit. He's living at 869 Columbus Avenue. She's at 655 11th Avenue. They're both in New York City. He's 25, she's 22. He is a driver, and she's a forelady. They're both born in New York City. He's the son of John Goodwin of Ireland and Catherine McGinn, also born in Ireland. She's the daughter of William Gorman from Ireland and Margaret Watson from Scotland. It's a first marriage for both, and therefore there are no former wives or husbands, so that spot's left blank. He signs it Patrick Joseph Goodwin. She signs it Miss Margaret Gorman, and then the clerk signs it, swears and signs it. Then basically the clerk on the license copies all the information from the affidavit in the clerk's hand, and sometimes they make abridgments, but you need to make sure you read both thoroughly, because sometimes the person in the affidavit may give you an extra detail that's not carried over to the second page. And then on the back of the license would be the third one, to the clergy and magistrates. That's the actual certificate. So after the ceremony is over, the official would fill it in and the witnesses would sign it, and then it was the official's duty to turn it back into the city clerk who had issued the license to begin with. And here we see that Cornelius Gorman and Sarah A. Goodwin are the witnesses. Cornelius is Margaret's brother, and Sarah is Patrick's sister. So relatively straightforward, but the thing to remember with these affidavits is that they do give a little bit more detail. You're more likely to get a more specific place of origin, especially if the bride or groom is an immigrant themselves. Not so much with their parents. Generally, you get just the country. But here is the Department of Health record again, and it's Patrick Joseph Goodwin and Margaret Gorman. The address, it's a lot bigger, So this is an easier record to read, but sometimes it's worth the extra effort to get a smaller one. We do see that they're married at the Church of the Sacred Heart. And these Department of Health certificates carried on through the end of 1937. And then the back of this would have this signature. And this was a different certificate number because they were kept by different offices. So the marriage license at the city clerk and the marriage certificate for the Department of Health will not have the same number. I guess there may be one like lottery winner where they do actually have the same number, but generally they do not. And as you can see, it was stamped that it was received on June 28th, 1916. So that's a full month after the wedding took place. And then the Catholic Church would also record records. And starting on Easter Sunday, which in 1908 was the 19th of April, there was a new canon law in effect. So if your record is in the Catholic Church, you want to be cognizant of any baptismal notations that would be made next to the bride and groom's names. And we'll see here that, again, they're living at 869 Columbus Avenue and 655 11th Avenue, and it lists the same four people as their parents and then the witnesses. But on the far right, it gives that he was baptized in July of 1890 at Holy Cross Church, and she was baptized at Sacred Heart in 1912. Now, based on how old she was on the earlier records, we know that therefore she was not baptized as an infant, so more than likely she was a convert, and in her case, she was an adult convert to the Catholic Church. So you can get little tidbits from their baptismal information, and it also directs you where to look for his baptism and possibly find other information about his family at the Church of the Holy Cross. Now, a year later, this is a copy of two immigrants getting married. So they apply for their affidavit. And as I mentioned, you do see a little bit more. We find out that the groom is from Stuttgart, not just Germany, but Stuttgart, Germany. And the bride is from Cork, Ireland. And not only just Cork, Ireland, she also writes down Glenville. It's written there below Cork. And then her father is Morris Buckley and her mother was Hannah Lane. It's a first marriage for both of them. He's the son of August Seeger and Marie Ludman. He's Alfred Seeger, she's Nora Buckley, and they got their license the last day of July in 1917. So then the information was copied over from the affidavit and issued, and then they brought it with them to the priest. They had a Catholic wedding, and we learned that their witnesses were a man named Emil Hess and then Catherine Buckley, who is Nora's first cousin. And as I mentioned, you might get more information of place of origin, especially for an immigrant bride and or groom. And in this case, you get more from the bride and the groom. Now here is their Department of Health marriage certificate. Again, it's a lot easier to read that he's living at 762 Caldwell Avenue. She's at 314 East 90th Street. She's a couple years older than he is. Here she lists her mother as Anna Lane, not Hannah Lane. So keep that in mind that, there are nicknames especially for women's names. So Bridget and Delia may be the same woman. Obviously, Hannah and Anna are. They got married at Our Lady of Good Counsel, OL Good Counsel. And the wedding took place on the 5th of August. So, it took a few days. They were, prepared. They got the license in time. And then a few days later, when they had their wedding, they were ready to be married. And the priest turned in both the certificates to the city clerk and the certificate here to the Department of Health. The four people signed the back. That would be the groom, the bride, and then witness 1 and witness 2. And as you can see, it just says Germany and Ireland. So by getting the city clerk record, you find out Stuttgart and Glenville County, Cork. And then here in the Register of Marriages, they are the second entry down, and you have Alfred Seeger and Nora Buckley in their addresses. He was baptized the month previous at St. Peter and St. Paul's, and she was baptized at Glenville County, Cork in April of 1892. And that's actually incorrect. She was baptized in April of 1891, but that is the location that she was baptized in. So at least you'd get into the right area. But again, her parents' names and his parents' names, and then the witnesses. But the Catholic priest filed yet a third copy of the record in his own register, and it does tell you where in Ireland. So if she hadn't mentioned it at the city clerk office, since it's post 1907 or post April 18th 1908, she had to provide baptismal details, and that helps lead you across the Atlantic or within the United States or any country. It's a good way of tracking to be aware of and to take advantage of. This gentleman was married 4 times. I always joke that John Meade must have been extremely good looking, very, very nice, or very wealthy, or all of the above. But he first married Julia Heffernan in 1887. So the reason that he's going to be good is we're going to see that he had certificate for his first marriage. So he had a civil certificate that we've seen before, and it lists he's the son of Michael, presumably Meade, and Catherine Dunn. And then it was recorded in the ledger style because it was 1887. So if we looked closer on that page, we'd be able to find him. And actually, it's not as hard to find because his mother-in-law is the only box that's left blank. So if you look to the right, about a third of the page down, that's the line there on her. His father-in-law was Richard Heffernan, and his mother-in-law is unidentified. But they were recorded both as a certificate and then the Register of Marriages ledger. And they were also recorded at St. Agnes in the parish register with the typical minimal details. They're on the right page, the second entry down, John Meade and Julia Heffernan. It lists the witnesses and then the priest who performed the ceremony. So there's no notes about dispensations or bans or country of origin or anything. He was widowed from Julia, and then in 1897, he married his second time. He's the bottom entry on the left page, and he's marrying a woman named Maria Cruz. And again, this is a very simple Catholic wedding registration. You get the barest of details, and there is no civil marriage record for this second marriage of John Meade. In 1919, he was widowed from Maria, and in 1920, he married Bridget Mulcahy, who herself was a widow. Now, they had filed for an affidavit to marry. He is from County Cork, Ireland. She's from County Tyrone, Ireland. And it lists who their parents were. And then the witnesses, as we've seen on the other documents. And here's the church record. They are the third from the bottom. And we see that he's again the son of Michael Meade and Catherine Dunn. And he was baptized at Boudevant, County Cork. And she was baptized at Clogher, County Tyrone. They do not have a Department of Health marriage certificate. I'm sure that at some point people were like, well, we just need to get the city clerk license, and that has a certificate on the back, and then we're covered. And the priest may not have wanted to file all this paperwork, so he turned in the certificates to the city clerk. So the civil authorities were made aware, and if his mindset may have been, if the Department of Health really needs to know, the city clerk will let them know, but I'm done. But 1908 is an important date for that city license, or the city clerk marriage license as well. If they were a Catholic, wedding canon law went into effect on April 19th with the change. So we find out where exactly in County Tyrone she was from.